strong. I'm gonna praise you. You are the rock I'm standing on, so I'm gonna praise you. I'm gonna praise, my voice I'll raise. Almighty God guide me every day of my life. I trust you, I need you beside me all of the way, all of the time. You are my light, and this is my song of praise, 'cause you are so faithful. You covered me with your grace, and I am so grateful for your love. I lift my hands up to the sky, to the Most High. Yeah, if I'm under the moon or under the sun, I'm gonna praise you. When I'm weak, you make me strong. I'm gonna praise you. You are the rock I'm standing on, so I'm gonna praise you. I'm gonna praise, my voice I'll raise. Almighty God, lead me wherever you want me to go. I will follow. Your power has freed me. You hold my todays and tomorrows. I love you so. And this is my song of praise, Lord. I give you glory. You covered all my mistakes and rewrote my story with your love. I lift my hands up to the sky, to the Most High. If I'm under the moon,
Absolutely. I lift my hands up to the Most High. Welcome to Chasing Purpose. Everyone, Chasing Purpose from Jamaica. Last week I was in New York. This is the power of technology. Today I am in Jamaica. I love fashion, but fashion is something that you buy. Style is something that you wear. Style is an expression of self, right? However, when you wake up in the morning, how you put yourself together, right? That is an expression of self. So we're going to be talking about the transformative power of art and self-expression. Art and self-expression has always been a powerful tool of exploring the human experience, and they have a transformative power that can help individuals process and overcome difficult situations. As a huge lover of fashion and expressing myself through my clothing, I understand the impact that art and self-expression can have on our lives and what that looks like. As I said, style is an expression of ourselves. When we step out into the world, when we put on, sometimes, for me, when I wake up, I put on how I dress, how I feel for the day. When you step into, you're supposed to dress as how you want to be addressed, right? So we're going to be talking to a designer from Harlem, I believe. She's from the New York tri-state area. Her name is Junny Ann Hibbert. I'm going to read her bio before I welcome her on. I am honored to be joined virtually today by award-winning designer Junny Ann Hibbert, who will share her insights and experiences on the role of fashion and art in her creative process, from her latest collection, Dusk, to Dawn, to her cultural influences and inspirations. Junny will give us a behind-the-scenes look at her work and how it connects to the human mind and our personal journey. So, y'all know I'm supposed to be excited about this discussion. Grab a drink, some water, a glass of wine if you may. Have your journals ready, because I'm sure gems will be dropped as we talk about the transformative power of art and self-expression. Junny Ann, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here, and I don't know why you're excited. I might just disappoint you.
No, you absolutely will not disappoint. And by the way, so I watched your would you call it a fashion short?
Yeah, they have all kinds of names for it. I call it like a visualizer, right? So it's like a look into the collection, a look into just what I am thinking. I think that during COVID, when we were locked down, a lot of designers started to try to find different ways of expressing themselves and reaching their audience, right? So a lot of us started to do short films because we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't produce. We were just stuck in our little apartments. So it has become one of the mediums that a lot of designers or a lot of creatives have actually embraced to actually tell their stories.
So tell us about your trademark name and the story behind Junny And it says Junie or June NY?
So, that's interesting. So, I'm Jamaican, right?
Yes.
So I was born in St. Thomas, grew up in Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Campion College and I went to the University of the West Indies,
Whoop,
right?
whoop.
So I was born and raised on the rock right there, right? So when I was growing up, I was at Junny Ann Hibbert, right? Which tends to be a very typical Caribbean name. And when I was a corporate exec, I worked at ESPN for a long time.
Okay.
I was Junny Ann Hibbert. And I got downsized, it's almost 9 years ago from ESPN, which is where the whole fashion evolution started. And I just didn't feel like Junny Ann anymore. It was like very proper, very not me, right? So I actually just dropped the Ann and just started going by Junny, which is the name of my brand, right? And I feel like I am quintessentially New York. So the irony that my last name is NY, NNY. So when I trademarked, the NY was, just for me, it like meant everything because, I have two loves, right? Jamaica is a land of my birth and it will always have my heart. And then New York, even when I was a little girl growing up, New York was always the city of my heart, right?
Yes.
So in all of that, in my name, in my persona, who I am, the NY, I just wanted to embrace that part of it, right? Of just the struggle of coming to New York, the success and the failures. It's a tough city, but it's also like the most amazing city in the world. So that was a way of embracing all of that in the name of the brand and who I had become.
And as you talk about New York, I was born and raised in New York, Queens, New York to be exact. So I am a New York girl at heart through and through. And I kind of did it on the flip side. So I moved to Jamaica 4 years ago, and I fell in love with it, and it has my heartstrings. And New York raised me, right? And you're talking about New York being rough through and through, aggressive. That is 100% me. But Jamaica is the same kind of sort of. So it kind of it fits, and I love both places. And as I'm watching you talk about New York and your love for it, I am just like, oh God, I know exactly what she's talking about. New York is a whole vibe, guys. New York is a vibe.
It is.
So can you share your personal experience with using art as a form of self-expression and healing?
So, like I said, I was a corporate exec. And I was uber successful. And I don't know if your parents are Caribbean, right? But if your parents are Caribbean, you could relate, right? So you're raised to be one of the noble professions, a lawyer, doctor, accountant, something.
A nurse, something, yes. Yes.
And I was supposed to go to law school, right? And I can hear my mother in heaven kissing her teeth, right? And I'll be like, this foolishness, this child of going with, right? So I decided I wasn't going to go to law school. And when I moved here, my purpose was clear. I had to become a corporate exec. You had to have the suit, the corporate card, whatever, right? All of those outward trappings that says you're a success, right? Mm-hmm. You have made it, right? And you were wrapped up. Your persona was not who you are, but the company who you work for, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when I got that unexpected tap on my shoulder, I had no idea what to do with myself. Girl, I could still tell you exactly what I had on the day when all of my equipment, all of a sudden I was controlling my mouse and my mouse didn't work anymore. And my phone rang and they said, you're needed on that floor. And I knew what that floor was.
Wow.
And then when security walking you out, like you took something and you're like,
oh, wow.
You're like, what just happened? What just happened? Did this just happen? And then, of course, there's a disbelief because this is me, right? I am the best of the best. Mm-hmm. How could that happen to me, right? And then that's a whole other conversation about you reach a certain age, a woman of color, you behave a certain way, right? You just don't fit into any of the molds or any of the areas that they say you should fit in. And, naturally, I just thought that I was going to land on my feet and I was just going to pick up right where I left off. And girl, I don't know who I was fooling. It just didn't happen for me. And it was a long, long journey. Mm-hmm. And short story, just couldn't seem to land. I just didn't fit in. success and experience, all of a sudden it was a dirty word, and you were interviewing with these young kids that told you about corporate culture, wanted to know if you get to the bar and all of these things. And I was like, hell, I've been there, I've done that. I don't want to go back to those years, right? So, it was a rough time for me. And I literally passed out one night on my kitchen floor and had no idea I'd passed out, busted my head wide open.
What?
And like literally had to go to the hospital when I woke up on the floor, got my head stitched up. I literally weighed like 2 pounds, right? I felt like I am now. And I just knew at that point that something had to change.
Yeah.
I just didn't continue that way anymore. So my friends are like, girl, you've got to stop. So we bought tickets. It was my birthday, big one. And we went to Italy. We went to a little island called Lipari.
Wow.
And when I came back, I just was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. This isn't the life for me. I had been working with a lot of makers and creators in Harlem, helping them with like their marketing, their strategy, that kind of stuff. And one of the women I was working with is Brazilian, and she made hats. And I marketed the hats, got the hats in stores, that kind of stuff. And she would bring in the most beautiful saris from India, but they were repurposed saris, right? And she would cut them up and she would make headbands and all of that stuff. And I was always fascinated, but annoyed too, because some of the fabrics were like so beautiful. And it was like, why is she cutting that up, right? And one came in and it was so beautiful. And I said to her, I want that. And she's like, well, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I want to make a caftan. And she's like, okay, what do you know about making caftans, whatever? And I was like, my mom was a seamstress. So anyhow, she's a trained designer. She gave me the fabric and I took it to the market. I don't know if you're familiar with Harlem, but there's an African market.
Yes, very familiar.
Right?
Yes.
And girl, all I had left to my name was like $75, right? And I'm walking from stall to stall and they're looking at you like, yeah, what she want? Because first of all, you're African, but you're not African like them.
Yes,
so there's that disconnect. And that's a whole other conversation about
it. That is a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. So you know what I mean?
Yes.
So then finally this woman, Madame Sabina, and she said, child, what you looking for? Come here. So I told her, and she said to me to go to this tailor. His name was Dembo, and tell him she sent me. And I told him what I wanted, because then I drank a lot too, girl. And back then there was happy hour in Harlem, and I would sit on the boulevard.
Which is a vibe, by the way.
Yeah, you could get a $5 cocktail.
Yeah,
right? It's all about. And I used to watch the Africans like going to prayer, call to prayer. And then you would see them in their colorful costume, or, when you walk on 125th, they'd be like, braid, hair braid. And I'd be like, you see, I got no damn hair. Why are you asking me if you want to braid my hair? And so I had this whole thought of making like the prayer robe, right? The grand boo-boo, this loose robe, because then I didn't want to wear a suit. I wasn't like that Chanel suit girl anymore, right? But folks would call you up and you needed to go out at the last minute, and I'm wearing cutoffs and a ratty t-shirt. You needed something that you could just put on and just be fabulous. Hence the caftan. And, they don't use patterns. I told him what I wanted. He said 75. I said 65 because I need to use $10 to buy a cocktail, right? He made the caftan. And the Sunday morning, my girlfriend, Karema, I was like, we need to take photos of this. I'm going to sell this caftan. And she's like, well, you ain't got no followers. You got like 2 followers on Instagram. So I go to her house a Sunday morning, beautiful brownstone. She's frying bacon for her kid, right? I wrap my head, I put on my heels, I put the caftan on, she takes some photos, and I put it on my Instagram, and I get like 14 orders right away, right? Remember, I only have like 2 followers.
Look at that. And it's almost like the door closing on corporate was just the beginning for what is next for Junny.
Yeah. It wasn't no plan, no strategy. Like, when I stopped being a corporate exec, I'm going to do this thing. And I was like, Lord, my mama's turning over in her grave because she was a seamstress. And she's going to be like, I know I didn't raise you to be doing no trade, to be cutting no cloth, doing any of this stuff, right? So my sister was like, kissing her teeth, like, what kind of foolishness? And then, of course, folks would be like, yeah, we hear she's making clothes and she's selling clothes, whatever. So it kind of started like that, where they would talk about you behind your back. And then I made one captain, then another captain, and they were all upcycled. And then I started using the African print. And then everybody started, the captain, they weren't call it a muumuu anymore. Everybody started wearing the captain.
Caftans, yes.
Everybody started wearing
and I love a caftan.
Yeah, me too.
A caftan. But there's so much to that story. So you, like every Caribbean child, you're supposed to be a lawyer, doctor, nurse, whatever.
Exactly.
You did the corporate thing because you thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, you're leaving Jamaica, you're going to New York, where you're supposed to do get a corporate job. When in essence, you probably don't even know that watching Mom, a seed was planted.
Yes.
A seed was planted, and it took you leaving or them letting you go from the corporate job.
They walked me out.
But that walkout walked you into where you are right now. Okay. And I don't want to jump the gun or the interview, but you are preparing for a to submit something to Vogue.
Well, no, not to Vogue. So, I think my whole story, and I tell you that story because, I found in this journey that a lot of people, and ever since I left corporate, like even people who wouldn't talk to me when I left, because when you get walked out, it's like you did something,
Correct.
Even though you didn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
When they got their tap, I'm like the first one they call. Because they're like, girl, we know how you know.
Now we know how I feel. Now that you're part of this community.
Right. So it's like, I don't know if you're an inspiration, but you're an example of the audacity of hope and just like, just imagining the possibility or not imagining the possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started this journey, and again, I'm Jamaican, and, some people might say I'm pushy, I'm whatever. And then, but at the same time, as a woman of color and an entrepreneur, you have to be in the right rooms, right?
Yes.
And right rooms mean that for us, we're doing like 10 jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Which I guess makes me Jamaican too. Lord, I hope nobody don't be talking about our people like that. So, so the thing is, I knew I had to be in the right rooms. And as a corporate exec or ex-corporate exec, recovering exec, I know about getting into the right rooms, right? So I would make sure that I got into the right rooms. And a couple of years ago, I debuted my collection, the Mama collection, right after COVID, a New York Fashion Week, right? And it was just an improbable journey of an exec who had no funding, no fashion training. I'm now showing on fashion's biggest platform, right? And of course, the collection was called Mama, right? It was an homage to my mom and to women like her. And just like a lot of Black designers who couldn't even imagine the possibility of showing on fashion's biggest stage, right? So last year, I think I was a semifinalist for everything, all of the big fashion awards, but I actually was a semifinalist for the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund.
Wow.
Right? And so
that is a huge deal. Let's not gloss over that. That is a huge deal. Okay? That is to be applauded. If I had my pot covers, I would clap them together. That is a big deal. There are a lot of designers that they have these amazing collections, but they wouldn't even know how to approach or what the process is. So, that's to be applauded.
Yeah, so there's a lot more, there's a lot more than just a great design. And it wasn't the first year I applied. And last year, so it's like a lot of people apply. So in 2020, during COVID, I actually was one of the recipients of the Harlem Fashion Row.
Yes, awesome.
Right, which was how they were doing the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund for that year. So I was one of the recipients of that. And then last year when, you apply for the fund and then they choose 50 designers. So out of all the applications throughout the United States, 50 designers are chosen to go to the semifinal rounds. And then they choose 10. I wasn't one of the 10 finalists. So last night I submitted my application again this year. Maybe this year is my year. We never know.
And yes, we're claiming it. Not maybe. We're claiming it. Thank you, God, in advance.
Yeah, I thought last year was my year, but then last year I was also a recipient of the She's Next in Fashion,
Oh,
which
wow.
was Visa's inaugural fashion award. So I was one of the women in the United States that was actually a recipient of that. And Fashion Group International, I was a finalist in the women's wear category for the Rising Star Award.
So
So that year was a lot.
let me ask you this, and if you are watching the app, you're seeing some of Junie's designs being rotated. What what was the process like for you getting into designing? Did you find that it was once you've now, the caftans are out, they're a hit, you're getting orders in, did you find it hard to get funding? Did you find it hard to get resources? Are you still finding it hard? Where are you at on the journey with that?
I mean, I feel like I'm in a pivot stage now, right? And it's a journey. Like I said, it's a bigger conversation. And, I'm happy that you're actually an African American woman of color, so you understand the journey, right? So even when you're a creative success, to get to that commercial success, the resources that you need, they're just incredible, right? And then the mentorship. And that's what's missing for us. They choose a few of us, and then the rest of us, you just have to figure it out, right? So, like I said, I'm in like the pivot stage of figuring out what that journey looks like. What are the partners who can help to elevate me to that next level? What are the rooms that I need to be in? I think that a lot of us, our business lost a lot of traction during COVID, right? Because I think not people started to consume less, but we were not traveling, right? We were stuck in one place, right? So your business probably had like a growth trajectory, and then COVID came and your business contracted. So I think a lot of us are re-strategizing and realigning our business and what our strategic business goals look like, right? So for instance, this collection, I did 4 dresses, right? And
Beautiful dresses, by the way.
The 4 dresses, it was deliberate, but it was all a part of the new strategy and just realigning, right? Because I think people want to look beautiful, but they want to buy less, right? And when you start looking at the younger generation, right, they're consuming less. They're all about repurposing, wearing vintage, so at the same time as you're creating, as a marketer, you have to look at the trends and what the trends are saying, right? And like I said, when I started creating caftans, nobody was doing it, right? They were calling them muumuus. But now every collection you're looking at
has a caftan
in it. So the competition is just like a lot more competition in the marketplace,
What advice would you give a young budding designer right now that's trying to break into the market?
So, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, especially we live in a world where there's just so much noise. I think just believe in yourself, right? Believe in yourself, believe in your art. And, you have to find the right people to support you. You can't do it alone, right? I know we try to do it all alone, but I would say be true to yourself, be true to your craft, and to find people who are going to support you on your journey.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the art of creativity and self-expression, right? And style in particular as a expression of who we are, what that looks like for you, even as a designer. What is the art of self-expression for you?
So, I think art of self-expression is different for everyone. For instance, I'm wearing now, this is like just a camo shirt, right? Well, not a camo, it's like a army green shirt, right? But you'll notice what I did, right? I took the sleeves out.
Yes, and you made it your own, yeah?
So I made it my own, right? I added my own little trims, right? So I think, you take stuff and you interpret it and you make it your own. The way it makes you feel comfortable, the way it makes you feel empowered. And living in Harlem, I mean, there's nowhere else like Harlem where you see that self-expression, right? Like you'll see they'll have on like a
Nowhere.
Gucci jacket, then they'll have on their socks and their slippers, and then they'll have the bonnet on their head, and you'll be like, what the hell, right?
But it works though. It works.
It works, right? So I think self-expression is it's just you, right? It's however you want to embrace it. I don't know if you had a chance to look at my New York Fashion Week September collection, and it was called Pause. And if you'll notice, it was a genderless collection. And as you talk about self-expression, there were two dancers from the Dance Theater of Harlem, right? Because I use dance a lot and a spoken word a lot, right? Because like I said, I think style is just more than fabric of fashion, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And voice and using all of the different creative mediums to tell your story, right? There was the original music piece that Bradley Harris created for the collection, right? So if you'll notice, Derek had on the dress, right? So it was like genderless and the roles were reversed. It's like who's wearing the dress, who's wearing the skirt, right? And I do that a lot, right? Because I believe that fashion should be and could be genderless, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm known for my overskirt, and I make more overskirts for men than I actually make for women. And it's so funny because I know they're not copying me because these are big designers, but when you see it on the major runways in Europe, you're like, oh my God, I did an overskirt like 5 years ago, right? I think it's almost like a validation for us as small designers, right? That what we're doing, right, and our purpose, right? We're really living our purpose, and how much more we could do if we only had like the necessary funding, right?
And I'm glad you touched on two things. I mean, it is. I love the idea of you looking at it as a kind of affirming when these big box or these big designers take the smaller designers, because that happens quite often. But you talk about purpose and the importance of finding your purpose. Do you believe now, as you're talking to me, that this is your purpose and that you found it and you're walking in it?
Well, I mean, I am of the belief that nothing happens by accident, and that everything that we do, it's predestined, right? So this is my path, and I feel like when you're in it, that path is not always clear. But then as you go through it, right, you're like, oh, okay, God. So this is what was really going on here, right? For instance, when I worked in corporate, I hated that blue-gray suit. And my boss used to be like, everybody else got on blue and gray but her, right? And they used to be like, don't want to call their name, and Junny, because I was wearing something, something that was different. And it's funny, now that I live in a different space, I see differently, right? And it's like, it's funny because I was always looking, but not really seeing, right? So I see differently, I hear differently, I feel like I taste differently. And sometimes my friends are like, you really are an artist because I didn't see that. Or I was in a fabric store this weekend, and I know we talk about dualism and the duality of, whether you're looking at it from a philosophical point of view or just like the opposites, right? So I was doing a silk skirt, and then I wanted like a really tough, nubby fabric. And the guy that was helping me, he was like, I can't see it. And then when I made the choices, he's like, oh my God, he's a designer as well. He's like, I see it now, right? So I feel like you see things differently, right? It's a rainy day, and you probably see just a rainy day. Yeah. But I'm not saying you because you're creative.
Yeah.
But
no, I understand. Totally understand.
Rain. But the first thing I do is I smell the rain, right? And it's hard to explain how I could smell when especially if it's a dry day, how the earth smells, right? Once the rain hits it, and all of that. And I think when you create, it's all of these things. We do a mood board, right? And I was in WWD last year when they did New York Fashion Week inspiration, right? And WWD is like fashion's biggest
Yes.
like news publication.
Yes, it is.
And they were asking designers, what are your inspiration? And the inspiration, like if you look at my apartment studio, it's a rock. And you see just a rock. I see the colors of the new collection, right? And then you start to go to Pantone and look at the Pantone colors, right? And then you start to look at something. Maybe it's the bag that the coffee was in, and it kind of dictates what your textures are going to be and what your colors are going to be. And then you start doing your mood board and you start putting the little pieces, right? And then it's a sound, it's the music, right? It's all of those things. And then people say, you know, like I tell people I'm like almost blind, right? But I see so well, right? Because when I close my eyes, I see colors. So they're like, how did you come up with it? I said, I just closed my eyes, and I'm like a frustrated painter, right? Like I want to paint and I know what the textures need to be and the colors need to be. But then when I start to paint, there's nothing there, right? There's nothing. So I'm that frustrated painter. But if I close my eyes, I can see it, and then I like to write, right? And I don't know if you've seen a poem, you'll see I'm always writing.
Yes.
So for me, those are just the different ways that I express myself just in that creative space. And then I can't dance, right? Even though I'm a Black girl, I can't dance. My friends are like, girl, sit down. Don't embarrass nobody. What's wrong with you, right? But at the same time, I imagine when I create the clothing, how it would look on a dancer.
Yeah, wow.
How it feel. And I ask all of my models, like, how do you feel? And they'll tell me, they're like, oh my God, when I put it on, when you put on that dress, I want you to feel empowered, and I want you to feel like beautiful, and I want you to feel special, right? And
that's exactly what the Dusk to Dawn short film has done. If anybody that looks for where and where on is it on? I'm seeing the press release right now. It's on NewYorkFashionWeek.com.
So yes, and I don't know if it's still up there, but NewYorkFashionWeek.com is the official platform for all American designers that show on the official calendar. So we have shown on the official calendar for the last couple of years. So all of the shows, you have to apply, and then you get a slot. If you're accepted, you get a slot, right? So those are the official calendars. So
and as you talk about movement, I was mentioning the video. I watched the video, and I want you'll tell our listeners and followers where they can watch it. But as you talk about movement of the fabric and how persons you want whoever dons the fabrics or the designs to move, how this dancer beautifully just kind of glided with the piece, and the piece moved with her. Yeah. And it was absolutely beautiful. So where can we find that right now? On your personal IG page?
So it's on my personal IG, Junny_NYC. It should still be up on NewYorkFashionWeek.com, but they can also find it on CFDA Runway 360. It's also on YouTube. So if they just Google Junny Dusk to Dawn, they'll be able to see it on YouTube. And if you notice, there are two videos: Dusk to Dawn, which was the official video that was submitted, and then we were about to wrap, and she still had the dress on. Her name is Minami Ando, and she's Japanese. She's an immigrant too, and
Beautiful.
she, when she came to the set, I was so unsure of her, right?
No, she completely she transformed when she put the dress on. She transformed. And we have to jump. Junie, hold that thought. We have to jump to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the Dusk to Dawn collection. Welcome back to Chasing Purpose. We are talking about the transformative power of art and self-expression. I am joined right now by designer Junny Ann Hibbert. And before we went to break, we were talking, Junny, about the Dusk to Dawn collection that was just featured. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Dusk to Dawn, I think elaborated on the concept and the storytelling of the collection. September's collection was Pause, right? And, I keep on going back to COVID because we came out of COVID, I think a lot of us different And there were just so many people who I knew had, they couldn't pause. So pause was all about not an end, but taking that moment and that time to just like pause, to find yourself, to get help, to find another way, right? And like it was just a whole thing like there's another way, right? Hence the semicolon, right? And then Dusk to Dawn for me was just deeply personal, right? It's funny. I am a student of literature. I'm an academic, whether I want to admit it or not, right? And I feel like for all of us, we travel into our heart of darkness, right?
Oh yeah.
So the night represented that darkness, right? That longing, that deep dark place that we all go to, right? When the sun goes down, right? And we struggle through it, right? And then in the morning, the light, right? And there is a dawn. But the dawn doesn't come right away, right? It's like where my window is, I get the sun in the morning. So you see, and it's black, and then you slowly see it's almost like the blinders or the blinds open up, right? And you slowly start to see that black into gray, and then the light filters through, right? And if you're lucky, it's the most amazing, blinding light, right? So there's a whole idea that there's going to be that darkness, but if you can just hang on long enough, right, there is that light, right? Or it could be that every night it's a dark night, right? But every morning it's dawn again, and you get that opportunity to try again, to start over again, right? And Dusk to Dawn, it represents like different things to different people. And there's a poem that I wrote that I copyright. So I wrote the poem, and then the collection came after the poem, right? And it just talks about Dusk to Dawn, and it was just said it was the longest, darkest night. Sleep was elusive, right? And it talks about me staring into the abyss, deep, dark, desolate, right? And then it goes through the darkness of the night and all of that you go through, right? And that you're needing a miracle, and there just seems to be nothing. And then you get up in the morning and you go through your routine, right, of the coffee, right? So for me, it's a coffee. It's me staring through my kitchen window, right? Slowly sipping that coffee. And then with that slow sip, all of a sudden, like the darkness, right? It disappears, right? And then the rose pink of dawn emerges. And it emerges quickly, cascading to the brilliant gold of the morning sun, right? The stillness and darkness of the night replaced by the brilliance of dawn. A new breath, inhaled and exhaled, dusk to dawn, right? And even the part about me staring out the kitchen window, right? I have an African fabric in my window that's like quite cheerful, and it has the symbols of the circle of light, right? And then I'm also Jamaican. There's another kind of lace piece, but it's almost like a vent, right? And the window is not quite clean. So as I was looking through the window, the whole inspiration for the collection and even the fabric came together. If you look at the first dress and the window pane of the dress,
beautiful.
It literally represents what Dusk to Dawn is for me, and what looking out the window, what it actually looks like.
And it's so important. And I love how you put it together, and you married the fashion, the style, the art, the creativity of it, and what Dusk to Dawn or Dawn to Dusk looks like for you. Right. And the message that I'm hearing there is we will all experience darkness.
Yes,
we will all. And even how you did the laying out of the pieces, the window pane dress to the cream and gold. Dusk starts, right? There's going to be dusk. There will be dusk. You will have dark days. However, light will come through. Light will emerge, and it will be all right. And I think you told a beautiful story with these pieces, and it encapsulated the concept Dusk to Dawn perfectly. I want to ask you just to impart a message, because where I am right now in Jamaica, in the creative industry, the fashion industry. There's a lot of disconnect. There's not a big community around it, right? Although there are some amazing designers here, amazing creatives here that are looking to get over the bridge and go into the New York space, go into the London space, go into the Paris space or whatever space. But there's a divide, there's a disconnect for whatever reason, a lack of resources, a lack of mentorship, whatever reason. I just want you to leave with them a message of hope that just kind of keep the faith, and that it may be dark right now in the process, but light is there.
Yeah, so it's funny because I asked the models, what Dusk to Dawn represent, and each of them, they're immigrants, all of them, right? Fiorella is from Nigeria, Manami is Japanese, Pooja is South Asian, right? So each of them are trying to find themselves, and as models, they're independent models going through their own immigrant, right? As we talked about, I know we touched a little bit on duality, yes, and the whole African-American migrant experience, right? So all of that was like tied up into the collection, right? But I asked each of them what Dusk to Dawn meant as they listened to the poem and they looked at the collection, right? And Pooja said to her, the poem evoked a sense of reality and sight. She felt loneliness and guilt, and then towards the end, happiness and triumph, right? Wow. That's what she said. Fiorella said it made her internalize a character, seeing herself in my shoes. And she says, as she read it, she felt the emotions of stress and unease rise until it suddenly stopped on that last line, Dusk to Dawn.
Wow.
So each of them took away something, right? So the whole idea of the collection was to provoke thoughts, emotion, and then I asked the question, can a dress provoke thoughts, feelings, emotions, right?
Absolutely.
There was a lot of that, right? And it was that whole dichotomy of hardness, softness, and the complexities, right, of the human mind, right? Light and dark, right? Peace and war, right? Love and hate, right? That's
good
all
and bad.
Quality there, right? But I think for designers, and I feel like it's not just in Jamaica and the rest of the diaspora that we have the struggle. We see where Africa is on the rise, but for the longest time, African designers were not realized. Right now, every couture house is doing a show in Africa, right? So everything has its time. But I always say, and for us as designers of color, it took the untimely death of George Floyd was what gave our, God rest his soul, but that's what gave our movement purpose. And a lot of good has come out of that. We still have a long way to go, but it gave us the recognition and the platforms that we never had. We were always struggling for it to be like more than one of us, right? And you'll see Shirley Ralph, she's been doing what she's been doing for a long time, right? Finally getting the recognition, right? So I feel like if there was somebody, one designer, experienced designer, there's so many amazing Jamaican designers here, right? That also produce in Jamaica or do a lot in Jamaica, right? Could start their own organization, their own not-for-profit, right? So I think it starts with that one person just having a purpose, and just slowly, right? It doesn't have to be a lot, because I always say, it's better to start small and then grow, right? So I think that could be the beginning. Here we have the Council of Fashion Designers of America, right? And then we have all of these other organizations, and what I have found is that you find your space, you find your community, and you build from there, So
important.
I don't know if there's like a local fashion organization but I think that's where it starts, right? It starts with a purpose and, just a desire to help and just a desire to connect. Maybe it's 2 or 3 designers in the room, right? And they start to build from that. And then maybe they align themselves with an organization here, right? Whether it's the CFDA or it's Harlem Fashion Row or, just one of the other organizations. There are just so many of us. I think there's another Jamaican designer that actually crochets or does her crochet in Jamaica. She's up for the LVMH prize this year, right?
Wow.
And yeah, and then there are just so many of us that have either won the CFD award or, I mean, are now on the radar. Theophilo, right? Is another big one, right? Greta Constantine, right? So there are just so many of us that have gotten more recognition on the international stage, but still have a lot of connections to Jamaica. Maybe it could be one of those designers that actually start a local organization, right? And then just build, right? Because I'm building. We're all building still.
I am so happy you said that. And Bridge Nation, I'm just going to drop the name Style File Global and leave it right there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Junny, I want you to tell us where we can find you. Give us all your handles. Where can people see the absolutely amazing fashion film that you just did? It was absolutely beautiful. I want the sequin dress, but I'll get your information and we'll talk off air about that. Please give us your information. Where can we find you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram at JUNNY_NYC. And my website is junny.nyc, so you can send me a message there. And I'm also on the portal for American designers, CFDA Runway 360, and that's where you can actually see lookbooks from my most recent collections.
Thank you so much for joining us on Chasing Purpose, and we wish you all the best. We are speaking into existence you coming home with that award that you are up for, and thank you again for joining us here on Chasing Purpose.
Thank you so much for having me.
All the best.
Okay, thank you. One love. Bye.
One love. This, again, guys, is what it is all about. I want to thank everyone who joined us here on Chasing Purpose. It was an awesome show, as always. Wishing you love, light, and, of course, purpose. I will see you all next week.